All right, welcome back. It's the beginning of turn 2. These next few phases are probably going to be the last ones I do step by step on camera, just so you, as I mentioned, so you have like a full turn of the game just to see how that plays out. Then we'll see how it goes from there. I'll either maybe give updates as the game goes on. I'll, maybe just talk about it when I get done, whenever that is. Maybe I'll play the whole thing. Maybe I'll say, yeah, something else has caught my eye. And then I'll run through another full turn of that. The sort of in between prep stuff that you have to do, you can see hopefully just about every unit has been flipped to its white numeric side. Sort of cleaned up the German replacement piles a little bit. I was a little surprised at first when it was a hot mess, just how many Germans died, but I could see that. There was like Soviet artillery. There was some stuff that happened down here, so maybe it's not crazy. It doesn't seem so overwhelming when I sort of make it into a little pile like that. Little things I did. I moved the turn track to turn 2. Next thing you have to do is you have to set the air points to the current game turn. So you can see the Soviet dive bomber points, they don't change from 0 for game turns 1 through 3. Later on, they'll get 2, 4, 6 dive bomber air points. Level bomber air points. These are the dive bomber air points, I think, are for for specific targets. So you can sort of use it to help support in battle. This is just sort of like general bombing. They're going to get three level bomber points. Let's see, the Germans. I mentioned this in the initial recording I did that was too blurry to use, but like a lot of gamers, I mean, especially after this last year with COVID, face-to-face gaming probably took a big hit. So the idea that like everything's upside down, like you're playing face-to-face, some of the numbers, like I get it, the procedure of replacements, I get it. But it just feels weird, it just feels a little odd as somebody who plays solo to have something still designed so clearly to have a face-to-face game in front of you. Let me see. So we got to set the German numbers. Dive bomber goes to turn 2. So they actually take a hit, 26 down to 18. They lose a little bit there. The level bombers go to 56 down from 80. So again, obviously, when they open this up, they really are going for it. Let me just clean this one up a little bit. So I'm sort of ready to start turn 2. The first step is the game prep stage, game turn prep stage. You just make sure everything's on the right colored text. So we've got white now for turn 2. Each player places his air markers on the spaces marked for the current game turn. We just did that. And that's basically it. Supply, I don't think was too much of an issue. So we didn't have to worry about it. That was something I probably could have checked at the end of turn 1. I should have been checking at the end of turn 1, but I think I can't see any units that have been expressly cut off. Like this one's moved pretty deep, but there's no Zocs or anything that would be blocking him from tracing supply back to wherever it needs to go. Because again, it's any contiguous in this game, so you can draw whatever crazy paths you need to get to where you need for supply to exist. So then next comes the air power stage, and you start with the Soviets, and here's one of those moments of asymmetry where the Soviets have to sort of declare what they're doing right out of the gate. I'm going to attack that hex, that hex, that hex. Then you decide, the outcomes. The Germans, on the other hand, they get to do it sort of piecemeal. Obviously they would get to sort of resolve an attack, see how it goes. And then they might be like, yeah, you know what? Actually, I want to do that one again, so you could then send more points to the same place. You have a lot more flexibility in how you execute those air attacks for the Germans. You start with the level bomber points. In this case, the Soviets have, I think, 2. They have 3 for games turns 2 and 3. So we get to pick, like, where are they going to attack? Man, 3 points isn't a lot. Getting to the 3 column roughly of the attack is not going to do anything. You're going to start taking into account, some of the terrain in columns 4 and 5. In rows 4 and 5. Man, well, let's see what they can do. Level bombers, you can see they have dive bomber level bombers. Level bombers attack everything in the hex, sort of like artillery. Dive bombers, if you use them at this point, instead of supporting attacks, they attack a specific unit in a hex. So it gives you a little more precision with the dive bomber air points. So it's sort of an interesting question. Do the Soviets level bomb artillery? Do they level bomb units? So sort of the way it works, I think I mentioned this at some point. So row 4 here is what you do to the artillery points or the air points when you're firing into a hex. So if your artillery or dive bombers or whatever is firing into a heavy structure, you cut the points in half. 5 is what you do to the die roll when you're firing into that terrain. So not only will a heavy structure cut your attack points in half, it's going to add 2 to your die, right? And adding 2 to the die going up on the charts in this game is bad. So yeah, so that's sort of how 4 and 5 work. You can even see like the Soviets are a little better about utilizing some of the buildings than the Germans, because I guess it makes sense, kind of their home turf. Of course, all of that is just a long stall to avoid the question of where are the Soviets going to do some level bombing. Looking at the 3 column, if they're in light structures, they're not going to do anything to the thing, but they're going to get a +1 to their. If they're in woods, not going to do anything, but again, a +1. That's where a lot of the German units are. You do have some German units out here in the open. So while it might not immediately help as much, maybe, well, it could protect, I don't know, Zhukov a little bit, but it might have the chance to inflict more damage. This is some artillery that's out in the open. That might be worth knocking it. Whoop. Classic tweezer work. You can knock out some artillery. But again, that's not where the action's at the moment. So I'm going to take a look at this. There are 2 artillery units right there in the open. I'm going to go after those guys. So what I do is take one of these level bomber things and I put it there. Now I only have 3 points. As you can see, you have to do it in increments of 3. I can't put 1 there, 2 there. You can see the German level bomber, you have to do it in increments of, it looks like 4. Dive bombers are increments of 2. You don't have the option to split that up lower than the increments on the track. So I only have 3 points. I'm going to dump all 3 points there. We know that it's in clear terrain, so nothing's going to happen to the dive bomber points being spent there. Nothing's going to happen to the die roll because, again, they're in clear terrain. So we are going to be on the 3 column of the attack chart of the CRT. Let's see what we get. A 6 is terrible. A 6 on the 3 is absolutely nothing. So in memoriam to all the cattle and trees that just got hit by errant Soviet bombs, but didn't affect the German artillery they were hoping to hit. Okay, so that is the Soviet level bomber points. Now, they don't get any dive bomber points, so we get to move on to the Germans. So now the Germans obviously have a lot more to play with. Let's see what they can do. Because they have so much, they might be able to go after some things here. Let me just double check. I don't think these are off the table for bombing attacks, but let me just double check. I mean, they don't have much range. 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they could get across the shore in a pinch, but let me just see if you can actually bomb those units. Also, just for some clarity, going back to supply really quickly, the Germans, they got to be able to trace supply to the western or the northern edge. The Soviets, it's a little more complicated. They can use ferry hexes. You can see them right here. Those are supply points. There are certain hexes where you're never out of supply for the Soviets. I think it's in certain fortified hexes. It might be these purple ones, but there's certain fortified hexes where you can't be out of supply. Well, actually it just says in a fortified structure, not special, fortified. So maybe any dark brown. I mean, it would make sense some of these factories, once you're in there, you're sort of in there. So I could see those. Yeah, I guess it's any fortified structure. There's, some down here, the barricades factory. Yeah, that makes sense. If you're under General Zhukov, I think you are automatically in supply. If you're within 2 hexes of Zhukov, I think you're already in supply as well. So that's the basics. Yeah, you're using these as supplies. You're using fortified hexes as supply strongholds where you don't have to worry about it. Zhukov, make sure you're in supply, stuff like that. Also, one quick thing about these Trans-Volga artillery units is that when they fire, they actually hit 2 adjacent units at full strength, not just the single hex. But I don't see anything specific about them not being able to be bombed. So what I'm going to do is why not? I'll spend 4 level bomber points on that guy right there. He is in the open. And it's going to be on the 4 or 5 column. Again, we're looking at these 2 rows on the terrain effects chart, 4 and 5 as well. Nothing's modifying that there, so let's roll the dice and see what happens for the attack. 1's pretty good. A 1 is going to eliminate 2 units. So that one's gone. So now let's spend another 4 points. Again, I don't know if this is what the best use of these units are, but why not? Again, we're on the 4 column. There's no modifiers because it's open terrain. Rolled another 1, so that's going to eliminate that unit. So let's see where else we can do some damage here. What else can we do? We've got this artillery unit on a hill, and that's the hill where if the Germans can occupy it, you stop drawing 2 reaction chips for the Soviets. So that could be a good hill for the Germans. You know, they could probably make a move this turn. So let's, you know what? Let's see if we can put some hurt around here so we can get to that hex. Let's drop, what do we got? We got units in woods. Woods are going to add 1 to the die, but they're not going to affect the points. So if we get to the 12 through 14, that's going to help us eliminate units there. So let's spend 12. 48 goes down to 36. We're on the 12 column. It's in the woods. We're going to add 1 to our die roll. Let's see how that goes. 3's not bad, but we're making that a 4 on the 12. Well, that gets us 2 eliminations. That's what we were looking for. Now, actually, what we could have done with that is we have to look for any flak units in range. Let me see if I can figure that out. So the way you tell if like a unit has anti-air capability is it gives you a little number for its air range, and usually it's on the side, like it would be there, but I'm not seeing any in this general vicinity. So I don't think we had to have worried about any anti-air there. Let me just double check these stacks. I think this is mostly armor, if I remember. So yeah, these don't seem to be anti-air capable. Man, I'm trying to find any anti-air on the board. Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I'm trying to find where there might be some anti-air capable units. And I'm not necessarily seeing any offhand. Maybe there's going to be some buried in here. But it's interesting that I'm not seeing any. Maybe, I mean, I see some on the reinforcement charts for the Germans, but it feels weird that I'm not seeing any Soviet units with anti-air range listed. But anyway, I'm not going to worry about it right now. So that takes care of that space. Now we need to, we got 3 units here. They're in woods, so we're going to add to the die roll. We wanted to have a good shot at taking out 3. We'd have to get to the 22 through 25 column on the chart there. And I'm not sure I want to spend that many points just trying to knock these guys out when I can probably go around. So let me see if I can start picking off some other people in this general area. Right there's a victory hex, so let me see if I can clear a path to that victory hex a little bit. Maybe knock out some of these artillery. So let me see. They are all in, this one's in a green hex. This guy's in fortified, so you're going to see it's going to make it a lot tougher to knock out that artillery. The green hex itself is no joke. We only have to get 1 hit on those units, so let's see. If we want to get a decent chance at 1 hit, we sort of have to get up to, how many are we going to add to the green dice? We're going to add 2. Oof. We need to get to like to the 12 through 14. So at the same time, what else are we going to do? So let's spend another 12 level bomber points, goes 36 down to 24. Then let's, we're going to go after this guy right here to begin with. And we're going to be on the 12 through 14 column. We're going to cut that down. Oof. No, we're not going to be on the 12 to 14. We're going to be on the 6 or 7 column. And we're going to be adding 2 to the die. So this is going to be tough. Let's see what happens. So we're on the 6 or 7 column, adding 2 to the roll. That's not going to work at all. Okay, so that's not going to knock. No, because it takes it to a 7. That's nothing. Okay. Let's get rid of that attack chit. That was wasted. Maybe we could try it again on that same spot because, you know, that's how the Germans, their asymmetry works. We could just go again. So why not? I don't know what else we're going to do. Down to 12. Again, we're on the 6 or 7 column, rolling a die, adding 2 to it. That's even worse. So that's going to go out the window. Let's see if there's a way to make these last couple of ones count. I don't know exactly how. Let's knock these guys out. Or, you know what? This is a big stack. Let's see if we can knock out these 3. 3 in the open. Let's have a good shot at it. What do we got left? We got 12. You know, we're just going to spend all 12. See how much damage we can do to that hex. We're on the 12 to 14 column. No modifiers because they're in open terrain. Let's roll the dice. 5. Okay. That's going to be 2 casualties. Okay. I mean, that's not nothing. I think it's a stack of all 2 8s. So, yeah, it thins them out a little. So that's the German level bomber points. Now the question is, do we want to do dive bomber air points? We could target specific units very much in the same fashion, but we could also use those points to help support attacks. And part of me feels like, you know what, why not just use them to support attacks? You know, when artillery doesn't have the range or whatever. Now, one thing I realized I just forgot, as much as I was talking about how those German replacements didn't seem like such a mess once I stacked them up, I never did those. So what I'm going to do is, you're going to see it dissolve in a minute. The process is a little complicated. You roll a d6 for each unit. You're trying to get a 3 or less, but then somehow that number also has to be less than the firing value for the chit. Let me just double check that. Yeah, that's basically it. You roll a d6, you're trying to get 3 or less, and the number has to be less than the fire value of the unit. And if there's 2 fire values on the unit, it has to be less than the smaller one. If you don't do those 2 things, the unit's permanently destroyed and removed from the game. I actually don't quite, at the moment, know why you have the procedure of replacement with red, green, blue. I don't really know what that is. Soviet replacements tend to be like armor in the factories. You know, you get militia units, depending on zones, but I'm not sure why they have that color coding there, but maybe it'll become apparent at some other point. So yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to dissolve here, and I'm not going to make you watch me roll a d6 for every single one and figure it out, but we'll be back in a second and talk through what happened. Okay, so there you go. Here's what we're looking at. These units on the left, they're the ones that make it back. These 12 on the right, these are the ones that are getting eliminated. One thing to clarify, artillery units cannot come in as replacements. So if the Germans start losing artillery, they're not going to be able to do this procedure. Artillery's gone. Now what I do is I can clear these guys out. These guys are forever lost to this game. And we get to deploy the remaining 8 units basically in any starting area we want, and it doesn't have to be specific to the unit. One of these, I think again, this may be something I mentioned in the lost blurry part. While technically, especially the Germans, they have starting units and starting areas, it's not important, really. So technically speaking, I can put these units in literally any starting area. You can see the starting areas are marked. This hard red line is sort of the German starting front. So wherever I want them to go, I can put them there. So I might put them here. Because, you know, sort of maybe we can start coming in, maybe we can start doing this way. I don't know. We got a lot coming this way, and, you know, they're going to slog through, but maybe I can, you know, jumpstart something. I'll, you know, put an armor with them so that they get their better attack number. Same with them. They can stack 4 and a hex. You know, they can stack 4 and a hex. Let's make some stacks of doom and go nuts. Just for... Now, the thing I just did is I did them on the wrong side. It's turn 2. We need the white text. So let me flip that over. So that takes care of the air stage. Now we move on to the artillery bombardment stage. This was the last thing that I did in the unusable first recording I did. So this is where we're going to wrap up this before we move to more sporadic coverage of whatever I do after this. So the artillery is not actually all that different than the air. Basically, it almost becomes like an impulse. The Germans pick a bombardment. Soviets pick a bombardment. But part of that impulse is because, in theory, you're trying to make the artillery be sort of a simultaneous outcome. So even if, like, say the Germans go first, they knock out some Soviet artillery, those artillery on the Soviet side still get to attack before you pull them off the map. Here's where some of the asymmetry comes back into play. The Soviets sort of have some restrictions on how they can do this. One, the Soviets have to bombard hexes that are adjacent to some kind of Soviet Union, sort of, I guess, as a spotting. If not that, then the unit must be within 9 hexes of this hilltop that we've been talking about. Mamayev Kurgan or something. Within 9 hexes of that, it can be its own spotter. I guess, actually this, you have to have a unit in this hilltop. It doesn't have to be the artillery. You could have somebody else there doing the spotting. The artillery could be wherever, as long as it was within 9 of that hilltop. If it's Soviet Trans-Volga artillery, which we eliminated some of, they don't have those same restrictions. I think they can just fire. And, you can bombard stuff that's not adjacent to a Soviet unit. In that case, then the Soviet attack points are cut in half. So if you have a Soviet unit adjacent, you get the full strength. You don't have a unit adjacent, you get half strength. Then one other thing, I might be missing some things, but one other thing that applies to the Soviets is that if they want to combine artillery into a single bombardment, they either have to be stacked in the same hex or they have to be adjacent to each other. So like these two could participate in a single bombardment of something, but these two could not. Germans, I don't think they have that. I think they can coordinate however they want to coordinate. If they can all reach the target, I think they can coordinate. I guess last thing, it might not be the last thing. I might be overlooking 10 different things, but one other thing is that there's a couple of other things if the unit is a mortar unit. So like this one here, you can see there's a little circle at the base of the icon there. That makes it a mortar unit. Mortar units have a thing where if they're attacking an adjacent hex, they're halved. So if a mortar is firing sort of danger close right next to it, it's not as effective. So you want to have a little bit of range for your mortar units, which, makes sense. And like the air bombardment phase, we're going to basically be using rows 4 and 5 on the terrain effects chart to basically the same effect. Like it helps the Soviets out. This is what you do to the fire points. This is what you do to the die roll. And there you go. So let's get started. One thing, though, to keep in mind is any unit you use in this bombardment is done for the turn. So you can't use it later. And this is something that came up, in the last turn where suddenly I had units sitting around like, oh, it'd be really nice if it could be used to support an attack here, but it couldn't. So that's something I have to consider. Maybe I shouldn't be throwing so much artillery around during this phase when I could be using it to support attacks later on. So I'll start with the Germans. They've got, again, like the middle numbers, the range. Way up here, they got some units with a range of 10. A lot of artillery up there, but they're starting to run out of opportunities. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So they could sort of hit, they could stragglers. They could sort of hit the edge of that. But what they could also do is during an attack, they could, remember, like you can move units in support of attack. They could move down, become deployed, and that would get them into better range of like a lot of what's going on. That might be, a better use. Same with these guys. These guys have ranges of 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So they can do it, But they could also be used in support and attack, which could help them move. Sort of accomplishing two things at once. This guy here's got a range of 18. 18 is going to get you, that's a lot. Got a firepower of 8 though, so that's not going to do much. Got guys here. Got a couple of artillery units there. They're already in range. They've got a combined attack of about 18. That's not nothing. Maybe they could sort of preemptively go after some of this. But again, we're gonna be on the 18 column. It's gonna cut that in half to 9. 9 is the 8 or 9 column. Then they're gonna add 2 to their die roll. So if they roll a 5 or a 6, they're gonna, let's take a shot just so we can say we did something. So these 2 artillery are gonna go after this poor slob right there, because why not? Again, 18, cut it in half onto the 9. That's the 8 or 9 column. Adding 2 to the die roll. Let's see how it goes. A 4. Okay, so they're going to just barely do it because a 4 becomes a 6. A 6 on the 8 or 9 column is still a hit. So they did it. Pop those guys off. I got to remember something I was forgetting in between turns. I got to remember to go through the Soviet dead pile to make sure I've got all the replacements I need further down the road. As I mentioned, there were some blank spots left open, which I was confused by. But, I assume they figured, why print so many units when a bunch of them are going to be available a couple turns in. Okay, so those 2 units are fired. So I flip them over back to the black side for, Hold on. I'm going to fat finger this thing into the ground. I guess that's one way to get out of playing the rest of the game. I shouldn't say that. I think like a lot of, World War II buffs, I don't know, buff is a strong word, but I do enjoy history, probably like a lot of us, it's something I inherited from my father. And Stalingrad has always been one of those things that has somehow the idea of it fascinated me. I've read Anthony Beevor's single volume Stalingrad book, found it really interesting. Then I went a little nuts and I ordered some like 3-volume massive, let me look it up really quick. Yeah, and then I ordered I don't know what you call it. It's like the Stalingrad Trilogy by David Glantz, I think, Glantz. It's like, 2,500 pages spread over 3 volumes covering, I don't even know what. Like, I haven't cracked those volumes open yet, but it's just like a lot of my wargaming, the idea that I might read that someday, or the idea that I might play Lucky Ford or Wacht am Rhein sort of is always lingering over me like some pipe dream. Yeah, Stalingrad has just been one of those really fascinating things for me. I mean, on the Eastern Front, how this, terrible war will go is, hanging in the balance. And it's sort of interesting that it all, again, like I don't claim to be a historian or an expert, but the way it's sort of presented is that it came down to this. There was a lot of other things going on, but somehow the way a lot of history has been written, a lot of it was this. Just this one moment, not moment, but this one inflection point had so much hanging on it. So that's one of the reasons why, like, in my head, I find the battle, so theoretically interesting, and why finding a game on Stalingrad has always been sort of like a, hard to call it a grail game, but like a grail idea of a game. I had the L2 version of Streets of Stalingrad, the 3rd edition. And I got to tell you, like, I set some of it up. I started punching counters and started reading the rules. And I don't know. I think part of it is that, I don't have the capacity for just massive games. So like when I mentioned Lucky Ford or Wacht am Rhein, like those games probably on my own, Hurtgen's Health, I got a lot of goss for somebody who that's probably going to be way above my pay grade. But just Streets of Stalingrad, it was too much. I started clipping counters, started reading the rules, and for something about it, well, first, I don't have the table anymore that I used to. I don't have the table space. I used to have a dedicated 4x8 table. I had to give that up. I might get some of that back someday, but at the moment, I would not have the table space for Streets of Stalingrad. But I don't know if gaming-wise, that's what I wanted to explore it. Just like I have that 3-volume David Glantz set. There's a chance I may never read it because maybe that's the Streets of Stalingrad of books. John Hill's game here is the Anthony Beaver Stalingrad equivalent. You know, a single volume, approachable, very playable from what I've found so far. I can't speak to the simulation aspect of this game. Like I said, I am the last thing I am. Even when I've read a book or two, the last thing I'll ever consider myself is some kind of expert. So, but this game has been like imminently playable, and I could see it going very smoothly for a solo player or a couple of regular players a few turns in. So anyway, that was a long ramble about nothing. Let's see where we were. We were doing artillery, spent a couple of points on the Germans, and now I can't see where they are. They should be flipped over. Oh, right, because I was knocking everything around with my fat fingers. Let me make sure they're flipped over. Okay. Those are the 2 units that I needed flipped. Are there any other artillery units that could do a little damage? And then again, like I feel like these guys on their own, no. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So like I could potentially, I guess, combine those 2 German artillery units into a 16-point attack. But I'd be firing into light structures, say if I went after them. So they could do a 16-point attack with a +1 to the die roll. I mean, let's see what that does. The 16 column is 15 through 17. There's going to be a +1 to the die roll. So, you know, like 5 or 6, I'm going to do 1 point of damage. Mostly I'm going to be doing 2 points damage. What do I got in there? Like 3 units? Yeah, there's 3 units in there. What am I trying to accomplish, though? I guess it gets me towards another road to some victory hexes. I could get that hilltop. Might clear a path a little bit. Here's some more victory hexes here. That's a victory hex if I can take that ferry, which has got the pontoon in it. You can't directly target pontoons, by the way, for artillery or air units. But then the other thing they could do is if they're deployed, they could be, you know, I feel like they could get more shots in. Let me just double check how deployed works one last time. Well, no, I mean, like, this is something I might have done wrong earlier. Once the artillery unit is deployed and used in a ground attack, then they're flipped over. So they only get 1 shot anyway. I guess the advantage of deploying is that you can obviously move them, and then you could just use them at any point for the rest of the turn whenever you're ready. But otherwise, it'd be the same. So I guess I'll do that. I'll combine those 2 artillery. I think they can do that. I think Germans can combine artillery into a single bombardment. Yeah, the Germans, they can just bombard. They can coordinate without a problem. So I don't know what's here. They're in the woods, though. What's that going to do? That's basically the same as being a light structure. And that, you know, is a little bit more in the path. So let me see if I can knock around this hex right there. So we got 3 units. We're doing 8 and 8. They both have the 10 range. So it's going to be a 16, which is the 15 through 17 column. And we're going to be adding 1 to the die roll. Let's see how they do. 3 to a 4, which I think is going to knock out 2, but let me just double check. 3 to a 4, 4, that's 2 units. So we're going to knock out 2 units from this hex. Well, I think we're going to sort of take the garbage out. Boom. Boom. Leave them there. That guy's flipped. That guy's flipped. So if nothing else, maybe we have a little bit of an easier path to... Yeah, I feel like I'm going to knock that out right away before the Soviets get a chance to pull any reaction shits. Anybody else? Got an artillery piece up there. I don't know. There's a lot of units in the open here, I guess. I could just take a shot at. But again, I might want to move it as part of a deployment. Got a guy here. Got a power of 8, but I don't know. I'd rather do it in support. I think same here, because I'm trying to do... Well, here the interesting thing is it might prevent a bigger... Well, no, the Germans can go first. Who knows? Who knows, right? So maybe I'll just stop there. I think the Soviets, you know, they could... Let's see, they could combine. But again, it might be better to help combine with the fire because, you know, they're in good terrain. Well, you know what? They're in light structures, so maybe they could do some damage. Like on this guy. Again, my tweezing. It's a light structure. They could do a 16 on that hex right there. Would be nothing for that. +1 to the die roll. 16 is a 15 through 17. They could do some damage. So yeah, let's team those up to try and hit that mega stack. So we're going to be adding +1 to the die roll because of the light structure. 5 to 6. Oof, man, the Soviets cannot catch a break. 15 through 17 becomes a 6. It's still 2 units, though. That's not nothing. Let's see what's in there. Up there's some area units we could have used. So you sort of need this unit to help. Well, maybe this unit would help that unit achieve its maximum whatnot. I need to eliminate, what, 2 units? I think I'm going to... Oof, but that's a lot of movement, but that movement's not the important thing right now. I'll take this as the first unit, so that goes into the German replacements, see if they can come back. You know, I'm not going to take him because that unit probably couldn't come back as a replacement, so let's see. I might take... that unit. Okay, that's not nothing. So now I flip over the 2 artillery units. Just think about it for a second if there's anything else. You know, the trick with this guy is it's probably going to get killed right now. So maybe I should find somebody to attack. Might not be the most useful attack, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, I was hoping to see if I get them because they're in the open. Is anybody here in the open? No. Woods aren't too bad. You know, just attack. See if they can do something to the guys coming after him. That one right there. So let me flip this unit just in case I forget. He's attacking on the 8 column, which is the 8 or 9 column with a +1 to the die roll. Wow. 8 column +1 on the 6 is 1 casualty. So let's see what's there that we can lose. I think it's all the same. All right. So there we go. Anybody else? These guys could do something. What I want to do is if they attack, I want to see if I can make them move. Because like say there's an attack going on here, they could move this way and still have the range. I believe. So I'm going to sort of hold on to, but maybe, yeah. These are pretty short range, 6. I guess we'll see. Or who knows? Maybe there's like a whole wave of reinforcements coming here that I just don't know about yet. Like I know there's like the 305th. That's a big one that's still over there on the reinforcement track. 305th. I mean, I guess they could, have like a huge force suddenly come up here and start working their way. There's like victory hexes here. There's the tractor factory. There's stuff worth taking up here. It doesn't have to all be in that southwestern corner. Now, the one thing, like I was mentioning, all these units could combine into a single artillery bombardment because they're all next to each other. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Unfortunately, they don't have the range to go after this stack here. These 2 do, but so they could do a 12 attack on a light structure. Honestly, it may be worth it just because, there's just a few less units the Germans have to attack with. So it's going to be on the 12 column. 12 column is the 12 through 14. We're going to get a +1 to the die roll because we are in a light structure. So that's going to be a 5. On the 12 through 14 column is 2 casualties. Let's see what's in that stack. Okay, so this is interesting. I think one of the things is you sort of need this unit here to help any of these other units attack at the higher number. I might lose the 2. I know it seems weird. Well, if I lose these 2, I'm losing 5 attack value, and I would still have 7. If I lose these 2, I still have an attack of 9. So I think they were there. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Oops. Now I know to put my casualties in here instead of just randomly on a pile. Okay, so that takes care of that. And that's it. I think that's the end of the bombardment phase. You know, again, I didn't really impulse it so much, you know, whatever, but I think it's good enough. So after the artillery bombardment stage, we go back to the operations stage, which is where the first video started, where, you know, the Germans start moving. When combat occurs, you draw reaction chits, and you see when the Soviets take over. So hopefully, I won't say hopefully this was helpful, because I know that it wasn't, if you're actually trying to learn how to play. But hopefully this gives you a basic idea of how this game sort of goes, how it flows through a turn, sort of the general things it's doing. As you can see, it's a pretty bloody game. Units pop off left and right. Some come back for the Germans, obviously, but I haven't done much with supply. You know, I probably could be cutting units off from supply. Maybe it'll become more of a big deal. Maybe I could pocket these guys at some point. You know, maybe that's better than trying to slog through them. Although I've sort of already started slogging through them, so maybe it's a little late. I guess one last thought. At first, I was kind of like, oh, it seems so difficult for the Germans to try and accomplish what they have to do. You know, they have to take, like, I don't know, what, 7 something victory points? Let me double check what the victory conditions are. Sorry, it's game turn 7, but you're trying to get 12 victory hexes. And so I was kind of like, whoa, wow, that seems like it'd be difficult, which I guess it, in real life it was, since they didn't really do it. But seeing the rules in play, you know, you start, you know, with any game, you know, I'm playing a GTS game on Vassal, and in our most recent session, I could not have approached my turn more stupidly, because, you know, I don't know the rules that well. So the way systems work together and ebb and flow and integrate and yada, 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 synergy, I didn't have a grasp of it. And so I did it in the most inefficient way and left myself in a weak position when I was done. Here, it's interesting, you know, having gone through a turn, you sort of get the idea, like, oh, like, you know, as I was talking about, you start to realize how the Germans can steamroll with the points left over after attack, you know, spawning more points and spawning more points. And suddenly you realize, yeah, there's a lot of things going on here that if you think about how to capitalize and combine them, it's sort of like a gamer's version of combined arms, right? You're not just combining arms potentially on a battlefield using how the rules want you to use them, but sort of combining the systems to, like, deliver that efficient 1-2. Like, you're meant to do this and then you're meant to do that. And I think great games, you could argue some games, maybe like OCS, you know, I'm not an expert on some of them. A lot of people really like BCS now, both by MMP, Battalion Command Series, Operational Command Series, Combat Series, I mean. And you can see how they get their systems, they get you as the player to work the systems in conjunction with each other to really produce, you know, some fun, historic maybe results. And that's impressive. So anyway, with that, I'm going to stop for now. Hopefully, again, something about this has been enjoyable. And maybe I'll come back and let you know how the rest of this has been going, or let you know as things develop, or let you know why I packed it up after I banged it with a laundry basket. Anyway, talk to you guys later.